You're listening to Lemon's Listening Library. Discover the story behind the stories with unique and raw conversations from the people who make your favorite books a reality. Welcome to Lemon's Listening Library. I am Randy Lemons, host, and RL Rose for those of you who know me in the romance community, or I am also a fantasy author. I am super excited today about our guests that we have. Before we jump into that, I do want to say if you guys are interested in joining our Patreon or having any of our services, you guys can go over to there, look at what we have available. One of our best things that we do is we advertise any services or books that you have on our show and promote it through all of our social media. If you're interested in doing that, check it out. It's a great way to support the show as well. And now I'm super, super excited about our guest, Hannah. Would you like to introduce yourself?
All right, sounds good. Hi, everybody. My name is Hannah Wolfram, and I do a lot of things that relate to words. I'm a trauma-informed book coach, an editor, a ghostwriter, and probably other things that I'm totally forgetting.
So you have a background in trauma-informed book coach. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
What does that look like?
So basically, a lot of my trauma-informed book coaching, my clients are working on either memoirs or nonfiction books that relate to their past. And a lot of the time, the trauma-informed element comes in when it's trying to help them kind of integrate their past with their present while still dealing with those tricky emotions that come up. So like resentment or just sadness, anger, all of that kind of thing that comes naturally with telling a traumatic story. You just kind of integrate it and work together to kind of move past those triggers.
So you are essentially therapying people.
I can't say I'm therapying people for legal reasons, but it's very similar.
So do you what drew you into that?
So a little bit about what drew me into that was my own background. I have dealt with some traumatic things in my life, and I have written through all of them. That's I credit writing with keeping me alive, honestly. And I wanted to help other people experience that catharsis that comes with sharing and writing. And even if they never do anything with the writing, honestly, just the act of writing about their experiences is...
So you said that it's something that you use to work through your stuff. And
Yeah.
so is that kind of where you got the passion to be like, okay, this helped me, this healed me. I want to offer this to other people?
Yeah, pretty much. And throughout my years, I've received trauma training. I've got my certificate in adult mental health first aid, all that kind of thing, just from jobs I've held over the years. And I felt like, you know what? I think it's time. I think I'm ready to do this.
So what was there like a pivotal thing that you went through? And how does that look too? Because like I love writing out my, stuff that I'm working through. And sometimes, especially when I'm writing characters, I don't realize sometimes that I am putting them through situations that I wish I had done differently, or that I work through the past traumas and I don't even realize it. Is that something that you see a lot with people not realizing that that's what they're doing, or are they more conscious of it?
When I work with fiction authors, I see that a lot. Memoir authors, they're more cognizant that they're doing it because that's the point of their story. But when I work with fiction authors, sometimes I'm like, hey, so this experience you're putting your character through sounds a little personal. Is it? And they're like, oh my God, that is almost exactly what happened to me, only my character's badass enough to handle it the way I wish I had.
And so in therapy, like they actually have, a system. If I thinking of this correctly, where they will go back in past trauma situations and walk through the situation as an adult or as someone who can handle that situation, and it kind of rewires their brain in the way that they connected with that situation.
Yes, yeah. That is a therapeutic approach. I've actually been through that kind of therapy, so.
So you've got a lot of tools. Now, whenever you go in and you see these kind of things, do you ask questions to kind of dig deeper for the person so they can pull up more stuff, or do you kind of let them go through it naturally and do it on their own?
So it honestly depends. Sometimes some people I will ask questions if I feel like they're just kind of really surface level dealing with something and they can handle that depth. If I know they have the capacity for that depth, I will ask questions. If I'm not sure, or if they just generally need that extra support even at the surface level, I won't ask questions. I won't push anything. I'll just be like, okay, let's deal with this now.
What is the most that is very so you have to have a level of awareness to know how far you can push somebody. Is there like is that a skill that you've just developed over time, or do you get to know the people that you're working with to really understand how far they can go?
I usually do a combination of the two. So I get to know all of my coaching clients before we even start the coaching process. Because if I didn't, I mean, I wouldn't know what they're comfortable with. We kind of do what in D&D is considered a session zero, which is like boundaries and like red, yellow, green, that kind of thing. Red being absolutely not, yellow being conditionally, green being, yeah, I'm fine with this. Yeah. And then at the same time, I kind of use that like instinct, that intuition almost, with to see if somebody can go deeper. If I know that it's not crossing a boundary and I feel like they can, sometimes I will do it.
And I feel like that is a wonderful way to get connected with someone. The session zero thing, I love that. I'm a D&D person, and
Me
so that
too.
that just like I have all my stuff right over there for my D&D. And it is I love that you use that terminology because D&D itself, if you go through a session or if you go through your character goes through something, it's so similar as writing it to where they go through something. You have to work through that and you have to think creatively on how they get out of it or what you would do if you were in that situation. And it just gives you a lot of skills. We do it with our kids and we will put them in tough situations and watch how they get out of it. And it is just anyone who is skeptical about D&D, I recommend it 100%. It is amazing.
I second that recommendation.
Um, so you essentially kind of set that up of like just like a D&D session, getting to know what the expectations are, getting to know what the character is.
Exactly. That's basically my first call with all of my book coaching people. And obviously, I don't charge for that because, I mean, it's not even a guarantee we'll work together they're if they don't feel comfortable, if I don't feel comfortable, or if one or both of us don't feel like they're at a point where they're ready.
Yeah. Now, that's what I was going to say. Do you kind of have to gauge it based off of their level of awareness and like, okay, maybe this isn't something that you should jump into just yet because the awareness isn't there, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so a lot of times I have to kind of gauge, like, have you talked about this enough, like in therapy type settings, to be really aware that you have triggers? Like, if you're not even aware that you have triggers, that is a no go because everybody has triggers, especially in trauma informed book coaching. Like,
Yeah.
you're coming to me because of you have some sort of traumatic experience or traumatic reactions. If you don't know that you have triggers or you don't know what your triggers are, that's a red flag. That is what I say, like, you're not ready for this right now.
Yeah. And I feel like triggers are almost like a roadmap. If you listen to them, they will tell you exactly where you need to do the work. If you're getting triggered because another mom is, commenting about your parenting, or, if someone raises their voice to you and you get triggered, like all of these, me and my husband have done a lot of personal work, and I get excited when I get triggered because I'm like, I know where I can start working.
Yes. Triggers, like you said, triggers really are a roadmap. They help you kind of figure out, okay, this is where I still need to deal with some stuff. And then you start doing that, usually with a therapist or a trusted person, and hopefully they're certified. And then you can come back and be like, wow, this experience is totally different now.
Yeah. And I've had situations too where like I will approach it or I will go through a trigger, and the first time that I go through it, it's very like you're seeing something for the first time, so you miss stuff. But then whenever it happens again,
Exactly.
you get to go deeper into it. So even once you're aware of your trigger and you kind of work on it, I don't beat myself up if it comes back up again, because now I'm seeing new things. It's like, okay, I've seen this before. Now I'm looking at it again through new lens, where let's find the actual root to this, and keep practicing, because when you do something and you're trying to rework a trigger, you do have to put in the reps for it. You do have to do it multiple times for it to really change the way that you operate in that situation.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. When you're triggered, it's never just a one off thing. A trigger is there because you have experienced trauma around a certain point. And that certain trauma point is not going to go away the second you experience the trigger. No, it's going to come back over and over and over again. No matter how much work you put into it, you're still going to get triggered at least once. Like, even if you think you've gotten over the trigger, you're still going to get triggered. It's going
Yep.
to come back. It's just mitigating the effects when it does. That's the
Yes.
goal.
Yes, yes, because whenever you like, especially, okay, here's a good example is anger. When you are angry about something, you can be angry about it before you have the awareness for like weeks. And then when you have the awareness, you can stop it maybe at the end of the day. And then the more you practice on that, and you do have to put in the reps, you can stop it within an hour, or stop it even before it affects and comes out. And that's why the reps are so
Exactly.
important.
Yes, 100%.
Yep, yep. And I always get, excited whenever and it definitely changing that mindset, because before, whenever I would have a trigger, I would shame myself. Oh, I can't believe you're letting this happen to you. You know where this is coming from. Why are you letting this happen to you? And now I've shifted it into like curiosity and excitement. Okay, awesome. Here's a trigger. I know where I can work on this. I know how to go through this. Where is this coming from? And using my curiosity to be like, okay, well, how can I go about this differently in the future? How can I set things up to where I'm facing this trigger, but also if it's something I can't change and it's out of my control, how can I adjust things in the future so I don't have to deal with this situation?
Exactly. How can I adjust my somatic and conscious responses? That's the important part.
Is that something that you run into a lot? I'm sorry, I'm going all into the mindset side of this because it is so fascinating and it's probably one of my favorite things. But do you find that a lot of times they're often trying to have other people change the situation, or they want to control other people to change the situation, whenever there's like, okay, you can only control yourself, you
Yes.
can't change in the other people.
Yeah. So that's actually one thing I focus on with my memoir clients, especially because they'll say, "Do I have to tell this story, like how it happened?" And I'm just like, you can't change what the other people around you have done. You can go back to the story with more insight. You can go back to the story as an adult, as someone who's prepared. You can reflect on the story as someone who's prepared, but you can't, if your mom smacked you, you can't say your mom beat you within an inch of your life. You know, But you also can't say, like, my mom fed me a cookie. You have to deal with the real things. Even if it doesn't seem as bad as it should, if it traumatized you, there's a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's such a good point too, because like sometimes we feel like whenever we tell our story and we tell our experience, if it is something that is not as traumatic as the what everyone in, I guess, what society thinks is actually trauma, then they're like, oh, this isn't that bad. I shouldn't bring this up. This is me being the victim, or having that mentality. But if it's your story and it's something that affected you, especially if you're not, because there is a victim mindset, right? That is
Yeah,
something that really does happen. But if you're telling that story without that victim mindset and it's simply just stating your experience, there's no reason to be ashamed of that.
exactly. Because society has conditioned us that somebody always has it worse. Like, oh, I might have just broken my leg, but somebody out there is dying. That kind of thing. And I find that mindset actually very damaging because we minimize everything that happens to us because we think, oh, some hypothetical person out there has it so much worse than I do. And that stops us from dealing with our things.
Well,
Because
it invalidates your experience too.
exactly, exactly, it invalidates everything. And it stops us from realizing, wow, we have trauma.
Yeah.
If you're always worried about that hypothetical somebody, you're never going to realize within yourself, wow, these things happen to me and I am not okay with them.
Yeah. And almost every time you do that, you're silencing your inner child. You're silencing the kid who is crying out for help. And just because someone else has gone through something worse doesn't mean that's like telling a kid who fell down and scraped their knee that, oh, that kid over there broke his, like you said, broke his, and it's he still needs attention. He still needs love, and he scraped his knee. That hurts, and that's the worst in his life at that moment, potentially, thing that has ever happened to him.
Exactly. It's that denying yourself that love and compassion that you need to kind of move past trauma and not even move past trauma, but like heal at all. And you're just denying it to yourself because you think, oh, it must not have been traumatic enough.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what is traumatic enough? Like, do you have to be shot? Do you have to do you have to be on death's door to have to be like to have enough trauma going on?
Yeah. And one thing that I found that really helped me with that mindset is other people's opinions of me are none of my business. Like the way that they view my situation and the way that they think I am, that's their problem. That is not something I take on anymore. And it used to be a really big problem for me. But that was so draining that I questioned every move I made. I questioned the way that this came off to everybody else. And I've gotten to the point where like I don't care. Like I care about the way it makes me feel, and I know that I'm a good person, and I always try to set my actions up to align with who I want to be, and that's constantly evolving and constantly changing. Like
Exactly.
I am never going to be held to a mindset that I have had in the past, because that might not be where I'm going in the future.
Exactly. It's when we take on the opinions of others that we feel the burden of the world because we can't control it. Like we said earlier, you can only control yourself. You can't control what others do or you can't change what others do. So when you worry about it, it's the hamster wheel going unnecessarily.
Yeah, and so I found that like I lived often in the past and I would overanalyze every situation in the past, and I was living in the past. And my husband is the complete opposite, where he is living in the future and he's worried about every action that's happening right now, how it affects the future. And so it's great that we are that way because we balance each other out, but it's also catching that awareness of like, okay, you're missing now. You're missing
Yeah,
everything that's happening right now.
exactly. You're not living in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, that was a huge long tangent for a bunch of mindset stuff, but you're the first person that has a something I can hook onto and like go deep with it. So thank you for
Oh,
that.
that's fine. I love it. I love talking about that kind of thing.
So how and this is my last question in this and we'll move on. Do you have situations where you have people who come in and are kind of um they are still I don't know how to say that. um we're going to move on from that question.
Okay.
So you are also a ghostwriter and editor. Does that something you kind of include with the other package, or is it completely separate things?
So it really depends on the person's needs. Usually with the trauma informed book coaching, I do not offer ghostwriting because the point of the trauma informed book coaching is to help the person get through the emotions themselves. And for them to get through the emotions and experience the catharsis of the writing, they have to be the ones doing the writing.
That makes sense.
The ghostwriting, I'm actually exploring a niche right now with helping people who are nearing the end of their lives and helping them to kind of get their stories and their legacies cemented before they pass.
That is awesome. Do you, so when you go to those people, do they already have kind of like an idea, or do you have like set questions that you start pulling stuff out of them?
So I usually tell them like when we have our initial meeting, I'm like, okay, so this is what I do, this is how I do it. And usually it's a combination of writing, interviewing, and researching. So I'm like, if you want to tell certain stories, start thinking about them now. Because, and look for artifacts, basically. If you know you have, say, a letter or uh, some other significant object that relates to the story you want to tell, start looking for that. Because when we have our actual first interview meeting, that'll be very helpful. And then when we are in our meetings, I do have questions to kind of bring the story forward, but the questions are individual to each person. I don't like have a set list. I don't write them down. I make them up on the fly and then I record the person's answers.
Oh, is that so you record, you mainly just go in like with like a recording and listen to them talk and that sort of thing as you're doing those? That's really awesome. I
Yeah,
imagine a lot of them typing or anything like that is not something they do.
exactly. So I just kind of, I'll either bring my laptop or a recording device and I'll just go on and take notes while they're just telling me things. I don't make them type anything because that's, if they could write out their stories, they would just write their book themselves.
Yeah.
But I'm there to kind of be that bridge.
Now, for those people who do not know what ghostwriting is, can you kind of explain that a little bit and what that process looks like?
Okay. So, ghostwriting is where you write a story for someone else. It is based on their ideas, their concepts. You try to channel their voice, their personality into the manuscript, but you're the one who's actually putting the words on the page.
Now, and
Most of
they
the
get to go through and read it, like kind of see how you've written and then make adjustments, correct?
of course, yeah. Yeah. So every time I say I write a chapter, I'll send it to the person who I'm working with and I'll say, hey, this is draft number 1 or draft number 2. Do you have any suggestions? What do you like? What do you not like? Does it sound like your authentic voice?
Gotcha. And so it in the end product of it, it does not have the ghostwriter's name or anything like that. It is just the person that they're writing for, correct?
So at the end, if they decide to publish, my name does not go on the book. In lieu of credit, I receive payment. So if say one of my clients publishes their story, like I'm writing for right now for a woman who was diagnosed with cancer. If she goes and publishes her story for like the world to read, it'll be her name on the book. not mine.
And I don't think people realize how common ghostwriters are. It is something that is very common, and like you guys essentially don't get the credit for it, but you do get the payment, so you get the compensation. But I did not realize how prevalent ghostwriters were in the world because you don't know about them.
Yeah, ghostwriters are especially prevalent on business books. A lot of business and thought leaders have ghostwriters. And weirdly enough, on those novel writing platforms that are like the serial novel writing platforms like Dream and Web Novel,
Really? I'd see. I didn't even know
ghostwriting
that.
ghostwriters are actually very common on there.
That's cool. Yeah, and it's definitely, I feel like it's a way to also kind of get your craft out there too. If you don't feel like maybe you are ready to do your own book, you can go in and work with somebody else. And it's very different from co-authoring.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Very different. Because when you co-author, you're sharing the burden 50-50 of idea generation and the burden of writing 50-50. The idea generation is all on the other person, and you're just doing the words.
What what drew you into ghostwriting?
So, what drew me into ghostwriting is actually the concept of helping everyone share their stories. I've always been passionate about diversity in publishing, and I actually started in ghostwriting working with disabled individuals who needed help telling their stories. And since then, I've kind of moved into more general ghostwriting for a little bit, and I found, no, I'm not the biggest fan of that. So I'm moving into the niche I told you about with helping people toward the end of their lives. And I found that I have a true passion for that. That is where I have really been like, wow, I love the work I do. I feel like it matters. And I feel like the people I meet are incredible.
How do you get in connected with the people that your clients, your potential clients?
So I actually work part time at my local library. And I have met a lot of clients through that because they've just offhand mentioned, oh, yeah, somebody said I should write a book. I'm like, I can help with that. Another way I'm planning to do is I'm planning to do like outreach at nursing homes. We have a couple nursing homes around me. So I'm planning to do some outreach there. Um, and yeah, that is, and of course the internet.
That's fair. Yeah.
Facebook is a big one because a lot of older people are actually on Facebook.
Now, do you feel you said you do research as part of it too? That I feel like a detective is, I'm just thinking of like a detective. You also have to have like this side like where you have to dig and you have to find the true story and where it all connects together. Is that something that you do?
Exactly. So when I talk about research, I'm kind of referencing how the person's story fits in the big, like the grand scheme of the world as it was at that time. Like I researched to get the details right. So like fashion and like terminology, I'll kind of go back to that era for like the stories to tell them authentically, but I'll also contextualize the person's stories with what was happening in the world at that time, the mentalities of the people at that time. Because, like, for example, the Cold War, when everybody was constantly in fear of nuclear Armageddon, we're not going to understand that the depth of that fear until we understand what happened to cause that fear.
So when you're writing these stories, do you write them in first person?
So it depends on the person, what they want. Sometimes I write them first person, sometimes I write them third. But people tend to they tend to like first person, but it's harder to get first person right because it
Yeah.
has to be spot on to that person. So, I mean, I'm fine with either. In general, third person is easier, but first person is more compelling.
Do you, I imagine it's so fun to hear these stories and just kind of in your mind picture what it's like to be someone who's lived through, the 50s and the 60s and, even further back. And just for a moment, you're almost like a time traveler.
Yeah. So I was a history major in college, and I
Nice.
specialized in 20th century history. So I find it so fascinating to see and talk to people who can make the events I only learned about in a classroom come to life.
Do you enjoy kind of becoming them for a little while?
In a weird way, yes. I actually really do. I love kind of stepping into their shoes and being like, wow. And you realize a lot about yourself when you're actually doing this work, because it gets you thinking like, what do you want? What do I want my legacy to be? What do I want people to remember about me when I pass? Like, what important things should I be recording now that will one day be this kind of thing?
Do you have any
Well,
tips on that?
so my biggest tip is actually something I don't do myself. It's to journal. Like, write down like anything that happens, anything that seems significant at the moment, or like it could be significant later. Journal.
Do you get a lot of journals like through your? Oh my gosh, that is so amazing. Just going that's I feel like that would be the easiest way to do it. Is they're
It
like,
is.
here's this stack of journals. Have fun.
Read them and have fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Your job sounds amazing. That I can see why you're so passionate about it. Like I'm thinking of like the Anne Frank diaries and stuff like that where it's like those
Exactly.
were so good.
Yes. It's kind of like that actually. Like one couple I'm working, well, it's an individual at the moment, but it's telling this her love story to her husband who passed a few years ago, and she's getting closer to that mark herself, and her children want her love story preserved because it's so beautiful.
That is that you don't think about it as you're writing your journals like someday this could be a book, or potentially if the book takes off, a movie. And like I'm
Yeah.
thinking of like the Notebook, and
Yeah. You
that
don't
is
you don't
that is
think
so
of it
lovely.
when you're writing in that little notebook, but
Well,
save
and I
those
think if you
journals.
if you did, it wouldn't be as authentic and it wouldn't be as emotional, because those journals I feel like get so emotional because they're not expecting anyone else to read them, and they get so in depth and in that
Exactly.
person's mind.
Exactly. Right? Like nobody's gonna read it. And
Yes.
save those journals.
And don't let anybody read it till you're
And
ready to
don't let
turn it
anybody
into.
read it until you're old.
I love that is I think that I journal, but I only journal when it's negative stuff. I don't really journal a lot of the positive stuff. So I
So
think I definitely need
yeah,
to do that.
start journaling the positive stuff.
Yeah.
And one exercise that can actually really help is at the end of every day, write down 3 things you're grateful for that happened in that day. And then if you want to expand on them, go for it. If you don't, that's just 3 things you're grateful for in that day.
I love that. Yeah. No, I'm gonna put that on my list right now because like I said, I need to get better at journaling the good stuff too. It's my life isn't just all the bad stuff. I don't want someone to pick up my journals and be like, "Oh wow."
Exactly. Just like,
But
wow, this lady's life sucks.
yeah. Nope, yeah, at this point it probably would be. But I have learned that sometimes when I start journaling, especially if it's a negative situation, what that does for me is it really kind of solidifies and concretes like, okay, where is this actually coming from? Because I'll be upset about something and then I start journaling it and I'm like, oh my God, why am I upset about this? This is trivial.
Yeah.
This is he looked at me a certain way. Why is that? And then you journal it out and it's like,
hmm
I'm actually not mad about that.
I'm actually not mad about him looking at me. I'm mad about his attitude, or
Yeah.
I'm
Or
mad
it
about
triggered
this.
the way that my dad used to look at me, or something. I was actually mad
Exactly.
about someone else doing it to me in the past.
Exactly. Or I was actually mad about something he did to me 5 years ago that I haven't gotten over.
Yes, that's
Yup.
a big one. And
Yeah,
that's one that I have found through our growth process is you can't hold people to who they were in the past if they're making an effort to grow and change.
exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Because, I mean, everybody changes. That's just the nature of humans. We're not static beings, we change constantly. And you have to kind of realize if somebody is putting in the work to change in a good way, chances are they're going to be like, you can't judge them based on who they were because they're going to be somebody different.
Yeah. Well, and they're also trying to change their own belief system of who they are too. And if you're constantly holding them to who they were, you were reiterating that
That,
behavior.
that old belief system, that old paradigm.
Yep. 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 Nope. And when me and my husband first started this, I was like, are you not nervous? Like, are you worried about who I'm going to become? And he's like, no, I'm excited. I'm excited to date a new you. I'm excited to get to know you in a different way. And I was like, that actually got me really happy. Like, I was nervous about this because change is scary, and stripping away the
Yes.
layers that aren't really you is scary. Who am I going to be underneath? And then when he said that, I was
Yes.
like, oh, okay.
That's the moment you're like, oh,
Yeah. You're my person for a reason.
exactly.
Now, you started writing yourself when you were hospitalized, is that correct?
Yeah. So when I was a teenager, I was in a severe car accident and I got a traumatic brain injury. So I didn't start writing then because I didn't know anything. Like, when I say I didn't know anything, I played Go Fish with myself in the hospital. Like, I would look at one hand, flip up the card that I'm looking for, and by the time I go to the other hand, I totally forgot what was in my first hand. Like, it was apparently it amused the nurses to no end just watching me play card games with against myself. And
Yeah.
there would actually be a genuine winner. And they were like, okay, she's not doing great.
She's doing the
But
best she can, though.
exactly. But later in that year, it was when I was 15 was when the car accident happened. Like a few days after I turned 15. And by the end of that year, I was in the hospital again for about a month because one of the side effects of the car accident and the traumatic brain injury was that I developed a pain condition. So it was basically like overactive nerve kind of thing
Mm,
because my body didn't know when to stop processing pain signals.
dang it. Wow.
So when I was in the hospital, the entire point of the program I was in was to put you in so much pain that your body would eventually be like, hey, I guess these aren't I guess it's
Oh
not
my god.
appropriate to constantly be in pain.
Oh
Yes,
my goodness.
it was a time.
So you have no problem writing pain scenarios or pain experiences. You're like, this detail is going to blow people's minds.
Exactly. And honestly, like I didn't realize it at the time, but that situation was very traumatic for me because like here I was with bruises everywhere. They were like I was at a point where brushing my hair was incredibly painful. And they were constantly brushing my hair. They were massaging my scalp with a metal thing. Like
Is that like their actual protocol for it, or was that just their like, hey, let's try this because we don't know what else to do?
that was for a while a protocol actually, which is the scary part.
Have they moved past that? Have they developed new techniques from? No, you don't know.
I
I
honestly
imagine,
don't
yeah.
know. I hope they have. I
I
really hope
know.
they have because that program honestly traumatized me as a kid. Well,
Did
teenager.
it make it to where you were afraid to go to the hospitals? Like any little sickness or illness, you're like, oh, I'm fine, I'm good.
Yeah, actually, it got me to a point where I was like, I don't want to just blindly trust a doctor because the doctor I went to was the one who ran the program. And he was
Dang.
like, yeah, this is great. Like, you should do it. It'll be great for you. You'll feel great afterward. And here I am, like 3 weeks in, bruises everywhere. Just kind
Did they have machines or like how, and if you don't want to go into further detail on this, but I'm just curious, how did they do that?
so it was kind of a combination of like extreme physical fitness training and pain stimulations. So like I could put a puzzle together while planking the entire time by the end of this thing. And like walking across a room to get the puzzle pieces and back with each individual puzzle piece, and I would never stop planking. I could do that by the end of this program,
Wow.
which my god, to get there was insanity.
So I imagine it created a negative mindset around like being active.
Yes, it did. That's why after I got out of that program, I gained quite a bit of weight. When I was in that program, I was like maybe 100, 120 pounds at most. But I gained a good bit of weight in the years after that program. Like close to, no, actually over 100 pounds.
That makes
And
total sense. Your body's like physical exertion is now the so they took the pain that your body was doing and they turned it into now when physical exertion happens, that is the actual pain.
exactly.
That
And
is
then,
rough.
and then they had what they called Fun Fridays. Oh God, don't get me started on those. They were, those like discs, the bumpy discs?
Mm-hmm.
You would be kneeling on those for at least an hour,
Oh my God.
playing games. So they were like, yeah, have a great time while kneeling on a bumpy disc to the point where you've got deep set bruises.
I don't even like kneeling on the ground with just a flat surface. Like that is
Oh,
painful by
yes.
itself.
Oh, yes. And
Oh my goodness.
I have bad knees.
Yeah.
So that definitely did not help.
Gosh, 15, that's such an impressionable age.
Yeah.
Did you, as you did your own therapy on that kind of stuff, how did you work through that?
So it really, at first, it started with, as weird as this is going to sound, like forgiving myself and my parents. I had to forgive myself for holding these standards and holding these expectations for so long that were not realistic long term. And I had to forgive my parents for allowing me to be put in that situation.
Mm.
Because when I was in there, nobody could visit me. Like, that was the rules. Like, nobody was allowed to visit you for a month minimum. You had to stay, you had to do your therapy every day. So my parents, they didn't know the extent of what was going on. I wasn't even allowed to call them.
Insane.
So they didn't know what was going on, and I had to forgive them because they didn't know. And because I didn't know what would happen and they didn't know what would happen. It was just they put me in that program because they thought it would cure me. And
Yeah.
they just wanted their daughter back.
Yeah.
That's what my
Yeah.
mom's told me.
But then, as if you think about, a 15-year-old, those are your parents. They're supposed to protect you, and and as
Exactly.
you're feeling that as a 15-year-old, you feel like they're failing you because you're not being protected. You're going through excruciating pain. But then when you look at it from your parents' side, they're like, we are doing everything we can to get our daughter the most help that she can, and they were doing the best they could because of how much they loved you. They could have just not done anything. And it's hard
Exactly.
to understand that both of those realities existed and they're both possible at the same
Exactly.
time.
That was a huge part of actually my working through this. It was okay, my parents cared, and this happened because they cared. But I felt like in the moment that I was alone, they didn't care about me, like all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was because they cared.
That's huge. And that is such a hard skill to learn. of like the shitty behavior of some of the people that are closest to us is actually because they're either from a scared place or they think that they're helping and they're trying to do the best they can with what they have, even though, especially if the communication piece isn't there, which you had no. For one, it sounded like you were scared. You didn't know what that was going to look like, but also that's not taught to us as kids. Like we are not taught how to communicate that kind of stuff. And that's a skill that you develop as an adult if you ever even do. And that's huge. Is like if you're in a situation that you feel like the people around you are failing you, try to communicate. Like,
Yeah,
and try not to do it from a place of hurt. Try to do it from a place of just letting them know where you're coming from. Because if you do it from a place of hurt, then they get defensive and they're like trying to defend their actions, and it's a whole mess.
exactly. That I learned that too because when I came out of there, it was from a place of hurt. I did lash out from a place of hurt. And my parents got really defensive. They got upset, and I got upset. So it really didn't help anybody. And then through the years in therapy, I was like, wow, I guess this is not the best way to handle things.
Yeah. But you weren't taught that, and your parents weren't taught that. Like, no one teaches communication.
Exactly.
Like, communication, it's like, oh, we're talking to each other. So this is communication. We're good. We don't need to know anymore. Communication is so much more than just talking at each other.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
no, like you said, nobody.
Yeah. And it's hard. Like just last night, my son came to me and because he an incident happened and he had a moment where he like got upset and he took his emotions out on people around him and so he got like you can't do that. Like you are allowed to have your emotions. That is 100% okay. You can be mad, but taking it out on other people is not okay. And he came to me later and this is what we work on is he's like, "Mom, when you got me in trouble, I just wanted you to ask what how I was feeling, what was wrong." And I was like, that's great,
Okay.
dude. Like, okay, I cannot believe you came and told me that. That is such huge growth. I am so proud of you.
Yeah,
And I was like, okay, instead of a week being grounded from your phone, you're only grounded for a Wednesday because of how amazing that communication piece was.
exactly.
But
And
it's hard and I'm screwing up all the time. And in that moment, I could have just asked him, hey, dude, what's going on?
yeah, I mean, especially parents, I feel
Oh
like
my
they they want the best for their child and they want their child to understand as an adult, but they don't realize their child isn't there yet.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then when their child does show like incredible maturity, they're like, "Wow, I didn't expect this from you." When
Or they
all
don't acknowledge
along,
it at all. And the kid's like,
yeah, when all along they just wanted their kid to act like an adult.
yeah, yeah.
Kids
And
aren't
yeah,
mini
that
adults.
yes, yes. Well, and that's hard too is like you have to look at them like you said, they are mini adults. They have their own feelings, they have their own emotions, but they're looking at life through the reference of only having 7 years of experience. And
Exactly.
that that girlfriend breaking up with him, that actually is the worst thing that has ever happened in their life. Like you might think that it's not because your 30 plus years of experience shows you that worse things can happen, but their 7 years of experience, or seven's a little young for being broken up with, but that still, 12, 13 years old, that is the worst thing that has happened to them in their life up till that point, potentially.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like we don't think that teenagers, especially, have the frames of reference that they do. But they actually, from my time as a teenager about a decade ago, like I had a lot of frames of reference. Like I felt like I was older than I was, just because of media that I consumed and just generally just teenagers. I feel like they feel like they know everything. So,
Well, they
but
live life at such a heightened state of emotion that like there is a part of me that's envious of that. Like I remember just living life to its fullest and it's chaos. It can be very chaotic and it can go to shit really fast because
oh
you are
yes,
so
oh
heightened,
yes,
but they are so passionate about life.
exactly. It's like where did that go?
Yeah. Oh, society beat that out of us. You are not allowed to behave that way. You are not allowed to, get all mushy gushy over your boyfriend. That's disgusting. That's PTA. That's all these things. It's like, no,
Oh,
that's
yes.
living. That is life.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, we beat so much authenticity out of children, like not physically, but just emotionally
Sometimes
and everything
physically.
else. Sometimes, yes, very true. And it's sad. It is so it and that's what's hard as, the next generation coming in is balancing the gentle parenting and all this other stuff. Sometimes I feel like it swings too far in the other direction and we're like trying to figure out this middle ground and it's hard. It is so
Oh,
hard.
yeah. Thankfully, I don't have kids yet,
Yeah.
but I know when I
You
do,
can
it's
observe
gonna
it
be.
still.
Exactly. I have friends who are parents, and when I am ready to have kids, I know I'm gonna have a lot of the same problems they are, so.
Yeah. So you went to school for creative writing in college, and that is something that has pretty much shaped your career path.
So my whole college cocktail, as I call it, I majored in history, minored in international studies, creative writing, and Spanish. So I took a lot of creative writing classes. But what really shaped my career out of that is I fell in love with editing. It's not so much the writing I fell in love with. I was already in love with the writing, but I fell in love with editing, and more importantly, editing for other people.
Now, when you edit, are you talking about like the process of like mastering their work, or are you talking about like feedback on their what they have written?
Feedback, mostly.
Gotcha.
I will, I'll read works a bunch of times just because I want to be sure I'm doing the best job possible. And then I'll make like grammar, word choice, spelling, all that kind of thing, superficial corrections in copy edits. And then if I dive deeper into like a line or developmental edit, at that point I'll be like, okay, so this plot point doesn't connect to this one. And I think you meant for them to come together, but they just fall flat. That kind of thing.
The curses of being writers. We have
Yes.
great plots, but then getting all the subplots to connect
Getting all
together
the
is,
little things.
yeah,
Yeah.
like the foreshadowing that we just completely forget about from chapter one.
Yep. Yep. I have seen plenty of that.
Yep, yep. The ominous person that comes in and tells a fortune and then never sees her again.
Never shows up ever again. Yep.
The fortune never is mentioned again. Yeah, I love
Yep.
it. Yeah, and that's why that's kind of what I figured. Just getting deeper into the story and helping someone question what is the story that they are trying to portray. Like besides the words, what is the overarching story that they are trying to portray?
Yes. One of my favorite things to help people figure out is what is the story I'm trying to tell. Because that that ties in with the book coaching, with the ghostwriting. What is your story? I call it your soul book when I'm coaching people. When I'm coaching people, and I'm like, what is the story you are meant to tell? And that's what I call somebody's soul book.
Now, so you're talking more, are you talking more of like fiction or nonfiction with that?
Nonfiction mostly.
Gotcha.
Because fiction, you can have a soul book that's fiction, or you can have a soul series, or you can have a soul trilogy or duology, or, it can be, fiction is so much more open.
Yep.
You can write multiple books with the same themes. When you're talking nonfiction, if you write on the same topic over and over again, you're going to plagiarize yourself at some point.
That's
And
fair.
yeah, and nobody thinks you can plagiarize yourself, but you actually can.
Can you imagine that lawsuit?
I know. Hey, I'm suing myself for plagiarizing myself.
I have no money in my bank account though.
I have no money in my bank account, but I want money from myself so I can have money in my bank account. Just gotta cash in your retirement.
Oh, that's great. I want to follow that trial.
Right? Like, that would be a court report I'd be like, hooked on.
Yeah, that's a good point though. It definitely the not the fiction is limited on what you can continue to write on.
Exactly. And like nonfiction, when you find that topic that just speaks to you, that's your soul book.
Oh yeah. Yep. I know because I'm in the midst of it right now.
Yes. Yeah, that is the story you are meant to tell.
Now, do you enjoy as a just in your spare time and what you do as what's the word? Not luxury, leisurely, luxury reading. Um, for your leisurely reading, do you enjoy fiction or nonfiction?
So I dabble in a little of everything. I especially love poetry actually. I love poetry. Fiction, I love fiction, I love nonfiction, but poetry is definitely
Yeah. Is it because you just the emotions from it so kind of compact together?
exactly exactly. And I write mostly very short things for
Mm.
myself. When I write for myself, I write poetry and flash fiction. So I'm very used to the form, and I love seeing how it's executed by other people. I love just seeing that like punch in the face of emotion. And then moving on to get punched in the face again.
So, see, your 15-year-old trauma actually is what makes you like the emotional punching in the face. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I know. I know.
Um, so you also enjoy things like tarot card reading and D&D. I love that you mentioned that. And then your dog,
Yes. I have a dog. His name is the Samu.
the Samu.
That's what I call him, at least. Everybody else hates that name, but he is my Samu.
Oh, that's cute.
His real name is Sam, but the Samu is so much better. And
Are,
he just turned 14 actually. He's an old little
oh,
baby.
what breed is he?
We think he's a Lapsopsa Maltese mix,
Oh,
but he might have some Bichon in there. Like he's a
she's a
small
Heinz
little
57.
16 pound. He's a small little 16-pound cuddle mug.
Oh.
Except he's getting grumpy in his old age.
I love those TikTok videos of those just old chihuahuas that like hate everybody.
Yes, he's getting there. He is starting to develop that personality quirk.
I get it though, buddy. Everything hurts. Nobody's
Right?
listening to you.
Right?
You just want to be left alone on the couch.
Exactly. He's like, I just want to be left alone at the door to wait for my mommy to come home. If you bother
Aw.
me, I will bite you.
With no teeth.
Exactly.
So, what got you into tarot card reading?
Okay, so that's actually kind of a funny story. So I was raised in a very Catholic household. So, going to church every Sunday, involved in the youth ministry, all that kind of thing. Then I went to college, and my roommate, her mom actually read tarot cards, and she had expressed an interest of getting into tarot cards. And I was like, oh, okay. And then her mom did a reading for me, and it was awesome. I was like, wow, I didn't think this would be as amazing as it was. It just kind of set something off inside me. Then I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy my roommate a deck of tarot cards for Christmas. So I got her a deck of tarot cards for Christmas, and she didn't like it. She did not like it.
She didn't
And
like the reading or giving readings?
she didn't like giving readings.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh, I would love to be in that position. So it all kind of snowballed from there. I got my first tarot deck off of Amazon. You're not supposed to buy your first deck, but I did because obviously I have nobody who's gonna gift it to me, and
Right.
I'm not gonna go stealing one because no, I don't want to get arrested for stealing a deck of cards. Thank you. I actually bought my first deck of cards off of Amazon, and I jumped in, and I
Where
haven't looked back since.
where do you give the readings? Is it just like friends or things like that, or do you have like, Renaissance fairs or things that you go to?
So I go to like street fairs and stuff,
Oh,
and
that's
I
cool.
have my own little booth, and I just kind of Wheel and deal the cards. I
No,
actually,
do you have like a personality that you kind of become in those situations?
funnily enough, it's more so the advisor, the therapist. I'm like, wow, that kind of fits with my life now, doesn't it?
That's great.
But people come to me and they ask me questions, and I'll pull cards and I'll give them advice. And a lot of times they'll ask me more questions like, hey, do you think I should? Or do you think I should do this? Do you think I should try this? Do you think I should say this? I'm like, listen, friend, don't ruin your life over a couple of tarot cards. Please don't,
Don't
because
go quit your job.
I don't want that karma coming back to me.
Yeah.
But
Oh
I always
man.
tell people, like with tarot cards, and I feel like it's with a lot of things, the information only reflects where you are now on your path. Every choice you make can change where you are on your path. So take the cards, take life, take whatever advice I give you with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it's not
Because
that serious.
exactly, and I use this analogy about pizza. So my analogy goes something like this. Say you and your friends are hanging out on a Friday night, and you have a party on Saturday night that you're all going to. You guys decide to order pizza. Now, this is where the paths split. Cheese pizza, meat lovers pizza. Not a big deal, you'd think, right? You order the cheese pizza, you eat it, yay, you had dinner, you go to sleep, you go to the party Saturday. You get the meat lovers pizza, you eat it, suddenly there's some rumbling going on, and you don't feel so good. You end up staying up all night, throwing up, shitting your guts out, and you're still doing that on Saturday. So guess who's not going to that party? The thing is, what if the love of your life was at that party?
Yeah.
If cheese pizza you meets the love of your life at that party, and meat lovers pizza you never even goes, that is huge separation there. All because of the type of pizza you order.
There are, and I feel like everyone has this situation, but I feel like everyone has that chance meeting, that chance thing. Like if I had just turned left at that stoplight, or if I hadn't taken that detour or whatever, I wouldn't have met that person.
Exactly. Exactly. And I kind
Not to
of,
say not to eat the meat lovers pizza.
yeah, if you like meat lovers pizza, more power to you. I just don't
No
trust
one's
it.
gonna eat meat lovers anymore. It's all cheese.
I don't trust meat lovers pizza personally.
Yeah, me either. I'm a cheese or pepperoni girl.
Exactly. I'm a cheese ride or die.
Cheese and ranch, and I'm good. No, that's I often think about the chance encounters and the chance situations in life, and I don't feel like there's necessarily, this no matter what, my life is going to turn out this way. Like this is destiny. Everything is based off of my choices. Like, and I can reach my
Exactly.
destiny or I can't. Like there's the potential and I
You
can
have the
reach that based off
potential.
my choices. Yes.
Exactly, but it's not a guarantee.
No. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But
That's
it's all and then that's another thing too is like especially people who believe in a divine power, they're not
mm-hmm.
going to get you to that potential if you do not put in the work.
Exactly. You can't just pray every day like I had somebody I was on a call with the other day. If you need to dig a hole, you can't just pray, "Dear God, please let this hole be dug in the morning." You won't go out you won't go outside and see a hole. You might go outside and find a shovel, but you won't go outside and see a freshly dug hole.
Or you're going to go outside and see a dog digging in your yard to bury a bone, and you're going to get mad even though that was the sign you're looking for.
Exactly.
I love the way the world works and just the things that we perceive as signs or the things that we perceive as a greater, power out there, and then it's we're actually mad because it's not what we wanted and it's not what we asked for. I want $1 million and there's a million deer in your front yard.
Exactly. Million male deer. Oh god. I mean,
Yeah.
somebody's eating good for the rest of their life, but
Right. Oh, venison. That actually is not a bad. Okay, I'm okay with that. I love venison.
I've never had venison, and I actually lived in Tennessee, and I never had venison.
Yeah, the steaks in it and the beef jerky that can come out of it. Oh my gosh, I love deer jerky so much.
I've never had venison, I've never had squirrel, and I've never had rattlesnake.
There's a lot that I haven't had, but my we are hunters and we do that sort of thing. And also we lived
Okay.
in northern Colorado where
Oh,
everyone
yep,
is hunter.
yep.
So like you can go into restaurants and order elk and antelope and things like that.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. But I want to travel the world and go like to Louisiana and eat like alligator and like rattlesnake and different things like that. I have big dreams. I'm not gonna
Big.
go catch those things myself.
Oh yeah, no, no, thank you.
So I know this isn't something that you have on your thing, but I love D&D. What got you into D&D?
Pandemic, honestly.
Fair.
So I started dating a guy right before the pandemic started. It was our 6 month anniversary in February 2020. So it was we ended up he moved out of his grandparents' house very close to when the world shut down.
Hmm.
And I would go over his place on weekends. And him, his roommate, and I would play D&D just because we were bored as heck. And I got to the point where I now write TTRPG materials and like I edit them, I write them, and I write like adventures and stuff. And yeah, it kind of snowballed out of what in the hell am I supposed to do with myself?
That's a great way to pass time is playing a tabletop game like that.
Exactly. And his roommate has like all the books. When I say all the books from like D&D, like,
That's crazy.
and
That is so much money. I'm just thinking of the monetary value in that. And it's
I
like
know it's insane. And he
oh
bought them when they were released, so he
my
didn't pay the
gosh.
crazy prices. He's
Uh,
had them for 20 plus years.
That is awesome though. I'm envious of that because like I've got 3 books and I we also play on Roll20, which is an online
Oh
game,
yeah.
and I have to rebuy those books on there. And I'm like, there should be a
Yep,
QR code in those so I can just transfer it over because I'm paying twice for these books.
exactly. It's ridiculous, but you're kind of stuck with it.
And it's so worth it. I mean, like the adventures that me and my kids and my husband go on in our own
Yes.
home is
Yes.
insane.
Yes. Like a campaign I was in, actually, we just recently set off the apocalypse. So, TPK!
Yep.
Our whole
Yep.
world is blown up.
You're like, well, that was a fast campaign.
It's actually been going on for probably about a year and a half now.
So it's time for the world to burn down.
So the world was already burning. It just exploded because all four of the world's gods came down from wherever gods are and decided, you know what? We hate each other's guts. Let's brawl it out and destroy this planet.
That's awesome. I always recommend fantasy authors or anyone who is in the book world to play D&D because
Yes.
like if you have a plot and your character is not forced to ever be in a sticky situation, the you have their drama and then they get over it. But it's like a way that you planned for. But if you were in a situation and you roll a nat 1, you have this idea of how they're going to get through it, but that shit did not work because they
Yes.
rolled a nat 1 and now you have to think, okay, well, shoot, now what am I going to do?
Time for a backup plan.
Yo, I have a scene that happened in one of my D&D campaigns between my character and my husband's character in one of my books because of how just badass that scene was.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was also very traumatic to the characters, so it was great.
I bet. It's like I've seen memes where it's like characters. Oh, I love you. Now I'm gonna ruin your life.
Yeah. And we play it with my kids and my daughter, like the consequences of life without having to go out and do something dangerous in real life is great. Like she
Yes.
roped a ghoul and it like yanked her to it, and then it got tangled up. She got tangled up in the rope, and she's like, "Okay, I'm never gonna do something like that again."
I mean,
Also, she's never gonna see a ghoul in real life, but maybe
well,
not rope a bad guy.
I was gonna say not rope somebody you're trying to get away from.
Yeah, don't tether yourself to the thing you're running from.
Exactly. I think that's a good lesson.
Yeah. And my son, like, we will put him in situations, and he doesn't know this, and if he ever listens to this podcast and finds out, then we love you, we're trying to help you. We will put him in situations that work through like real life stuff he's going through. Like a character will approach him and say things to him that kind of makes him work through stuff that maybe he's going through in real life, like
Okay.
bullying or things like that, and have him work through it that way. And we actually plan that on purpose to put them in situations that they have to work through.
That's actually a very good idea. When I have kids, I will totally take that.
Or even like family members, like go through it with a family member and have them work through something that they're going through
Be
and they don't
like,
even know it. Yep, yep.
your character is now going to die. You're going to go to hell now. You'll fight
Yeah,
your
yeah.
way out.
It's so fun. So, you have a love for globes and maps. Is that from your history background?
So kind of, yes. I have always had a love for globes and maps just because, I don't know, I just like them. They soothe me. And with my history background, I've actually understood more of what's on globes and maps. I took a cultural geography class and majored in history. So I'm like, I know things about these countries now. I think my favorite globe that I own, though, is a gemstone globe, where every
Oh,
country is a different, like, semi-precious stone.
hmm.
Yes.
That's interesting. That's like your birth month, but now it's where you live.
Yeah, kind of. And I got it from a Renaissance fair, actually. And I had to carry it around. A Renaissance fair. And this thing is heavy as shit.
I bet.
But I was motivated. I wanted it. So I was gonna
Pain can
carry
be a
it.
good motivator, yeah. Do you remember what kind of got you into that, or like is there a meaning behind the globes?
I don't know what got me into it actually, because with that traumatic brain injury, I also don't have many memories from before the accident. So I don't remember much of my life before I was 15.
Mm.
It's basically like I was born as a teenager.
That's intense. Hello hormones, no skills up until then.
Exactly. It's like, oh,
That sounds like the worst possible thing to go through, like
yeah, it was not
overload.
great.
Yeah.
It was not great. And it's like, hello world, I'm hormonal.
Oh man, yeah. No, there's so many pros and cons to being a teenager, but I mean there's pros and cons to everything, so.
Exactly. There's pros and cons to everything in life.
And it's also about how you choose to view it too. Like even a con can be a pro if you change your position on how you're looking at it.
Exactly. If you change your mindset, anything can be negative if you change your mindset, and anything can be positive if you change your mindset.
So you mentioned that you like poetry, and
Yes.
that you are drawn to the World War One literature.
Yes. So one thing I absolutely love is the intersection of World War One and poetry. It's called trench poetry.
Hmm.
So World War One, I'm autistic, and World War One has been my special interest for the past several years. Poetry I also love, and I started reading trench poetry, and I was like, whoa. I actually wanted to write my thesis on trench poetry, but my advisor wouldn't let me. I was sad.
So what is it that is what is it about the trench poetry and the writing that you like so much?
So I just find it so poignant, and like the depth of the emotion is insane because these men have seen the epitome of human suffering, and here they are conveying it in a way that makes sense to them. And oh my goodness, like I've never been in a war zone. I hope I never am. But holy shit, the poetry that can come out of it.
Yeah. I definitely think that, and that's a good example of like there was a positive out of that really bad situation.
Exactly. We got some of the best writers of the early 20th century out of World War One.
Yeah.
If they didn't go, insane.
Yeah, yeah, that is definitely a tipping point.
Shell shock. Yep.
And no one knowing how to deal with it. No one, everyone's like, just
Yes.
let's just ignore it and maybe
Let's
it'll go
put them
away.
in a hospital, a mental institution, and they'll just stay there forever.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, human development blows my mind. And the things that we thought were okay and the things that we think are going to fix stuff. And even now I'm
Oh,
wondering like
yes.
in the future, what is it about our situation now that people are gonna be like, that's really how they dealt with that?
That pain program. 100% that pain
Yeah,
program. They're going to look at that
fair
and be like,
enough.
who thought this was a good idea?
To be fair, I'm already on that train. Who the fuck? Like, why would you put someone through that?
Yeah, I'm on that
Um,
train with you.
oh man. So you talked about with your dream dinner guest. Do you remember who you put for those?
I know I put Wilfred Owen, Siegfried Sassoon, and I'm trying to remember the third one.
I'm gonna botch this name because that's my thing. It's
Okay.
Eric Mer.
Oh, Eric Remarque.
Yes, yep,
Yep, he was German.
Eric.
He was German. He wrote,
So,
Eric Remarque wrote All Quiet on the Western Front,
mm,
which is a novel. I have read the sequel to it, but I have not read All Quiet. And I'm trying to get myself to read All Quiet. But I have been working for so long with books and words that when I'm done, I'm like,
no more words.
no more words, please.
Do you listen to audiobooks at all?
I do.
Yeah, I love
That's the way I'm gonna do it. I actually just recently connected to my library's audiobook app, and
them.
I'm like, this is how it's gonna happen.
Yes, and it blows my mind that there are waiting lists for digital copies and digital
Yes.
things. Like,
I
this is
actually
digital.
I actually work at my local library, so I know why there are waiting lists.
Oh, do tell.
So it's because the library only buys a certain number of licenses.
That makes sense.
It's not like, oh, they bought it once, they can give it to everybody. No, they have to have a number of licenses that they can redistribute.
That makes so much. How do the library blows my mind on how they even operate because the amount of money that they put in versus the amount, because you only
Yeah.
pay money to the library when you have late fees on your book.
And my library doesn't even have late fees anymore.
How are they? Is it just taxes?
Taxes.
Mm, that makes sense.
Taxes, charitable donations from the community, all that kind of thing. That's how libraries do it.
Well, that makes sense, and that's I love that you said that because I was like, I don't understand. It's not a physical copy. It is digital. Why is there a waiting list? So
Yep.
that makes total sense.
It's the licensing issue.
So you have a couple of things that kind of have affected your mental health that you
Yes.
are working on. I imagine, well, everyone works on stuff constantly, but when you have disorders, my son is autistic and my husband is undiagnosed, but pretty sure. And it's things that like when you have something that kind of tips you in the scale away from normal,
Yeah.
it's hard.
It is. It really is. Like, I'm autistic and I have some severe mental issues. I guess issues, quote unquote.
Issues. Yeah.
Like, I have severe anxiety, panic disorder. I have this thing called schizoaffective disorder that I basically describe as the fun parts of schizophrenia and the fun parts of bipolar put together.
Ah.
Oh.
So there can
So,
be combination things. Oh, yeah, wow. Fun stuff.
oh yeah, manic episode with the schizophrenia kicking in.
So you're just a ball of spiciness.
I'm a ball of spicy. You try to eat me and you will spit me right back out.
I love that. And now, is that something that diagnosed over time or just kind of realized that it was there? And how did you learn to cope with it or not even cope with it? I imagine you've worked through things.
Yeah, so it's kind of been a process to get diagnosed. I was misdiagnosed a lot, especially as a teenager. Before the autism diagnosis, also, I was misdiagnosed a lot because they were like, oh, you're just depressed and anxious. Oh, it's bipolar. Oh, it's just severe anxiety and panic disorder. I'm like, okay.
That
But
doesn't really help me.
yeah, I'm like, okay, thanks. They're like, go to therapy, take this medicine. At one point, I was on like 6 different psych meds at once. And I'm like, I think this is a little ridiculous. So I actually saw a different person. I had been seeing the same psychiatrist since I was like 16, and I saw a different person in my mid 20s. They were like, "How has nobody told you you're autistic?" I'm
Oh
like,
my God.
and then they're like, so that's what kind of got the ball rolling. Then
What,
it's
how do
like,
you, sorry,
then
go
it's
ahead.
like autism, OCD, schizoaffective, all that good stuff.
How do you deal with, and autism and any sort of disorder is, the labels are super helpful in understanding, but how do you feel about the labels as like your identity?
Okay, so that's actually a very good question because, as well as being on the spectrum, I'm chronically ill. So I have the disabled, the autistic, the mentally ill, the chronically ill. I don't like those as an identity. That is not my whole person. I am not just autistic. I am autistic with a bunch of traits that are related and not related. Like, I feel like as humans, labels just put us in boxes, and nobody fits perfectly in a box. It's like expecting everybody to be able to fit in the same size clothes. It'll fit some people amazingly, but most people, you're going to either be drowning in them or bulging out everywhere, and you're not going to fit.
Or it fits up top and is tight down bottom?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like giving everybody a size medium shirt and a size medium pants. Like, it might be the average. It might have been the average years ago, but it's not right now, and it's not going to fit everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel, and that's one thing like with my son, like I don't tell people he's autistic. I don't tell his coaches he's autistic. I don't want anyone to treat him differently. And I also
Exactly.
don't want him to get away with things. We're just going to keep
Yes,
doing air quotes all the time because he's autistic. Like if he is off screwing around on the field and not paying attention, get on to him. He's not going to break. He needs that structure. And, there are situations where he does need compassion and he does need understanding, but he also needs to not be sheltered from the world and what it's really like.
exactly. That's actually one reason, and I know this is a hot take. It's actually one reason I'm kind of glad I wasn't diagnosed as autistic until I was in my mid 20s. Because
Yeah.
I grew up with nobody knowing I was autistic and with me myself not knowing. So I didn't get away with those like typical autistic behaviors. Like
Yeah.
if I did something, I would get called out for it. They weren't like, oh, she's special. We can't touch her.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was like, if I did something, there would be consequences. Like,
Yes.
just like there are for everyone else.
Yeah. No, and if you like just like you said, if you treat someone special, they're going to behave special.
Exactly. Like, if
Yeah.
you treat somebody like they can get away with the world, they're going to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, and that's exactly what my husband said. Like he understanding autism and understanding how his brain works and why he likes the patterns, why the routines getting messed up affects him so deeply. Like it just
Yep.
helps him understand and not shame himself. Like that is the piece that he is grateful for, but we have talked about it multiple times. Like he's glad that his mom treated him the way she did because he operates so well in society, but there is also that like he shamed himself so much for the way that he was. And that's the hard part is
Oh, yeah.
that there wasn't the understanding piece of routines are important. Like there are things in his life that are very important to him and everyone else is like, oh, just get over it.
Yes.
It's harder for them.
Yes.
So it's hard to balance that routine it's hard to balance the understanding of things are a little different with the mindset that you have, but also you can't get away with treating people like shit just because you're autistic.
Exactly. For me, what's kind of hard for me is my comfort objects.
Yeah.
I have several like comfort objects that if I'm separated from for too long, I get very anxious. And it the thing is, it's like you're 27, you can't bring a fuzzy blanket with you everywhere you go.
Watch me.
Exactly. I'm like, I will. I'll
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that. I love when people can sit back into their authenticity and be like, this is who I am, bitches. But then it's
Exactly.
not, but then on the other side of that, like not being like, this is who I am and I'm not changing. Like that's also the
Yes.
toxic side of it. Like,
Yes.
no, you're not just because you're blunt and you tell everyone the first thing that pops into your mind, that's not just who you are, you're actually being a dick.
Yes. Like really. It's like you're what? Is that a
Yeah.
personality trait? Because you really shouldn't. Like that needs to go away.
Yeah, there's growth that can totally and it's not like finding you can still tell people how you feel. Like I encourage that
Oh yeah,
100%. I'm not saying
100%.
yeah, but you don't have to just be malicious about it.
Yes, there are ways to do it that aren't dickish.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep, yep. Everyone's going through their own
something.
chaos.
Everyone's
Yes,
going
and
through something.
yep. And that's one thing like I worked in customer service and
Yep.
just understanding like the guy who's being a jerk to you at the window, his kids are probably yelling at him, his wife's telling him to hurry up, his there's so much stuff going on like customer service is such a unique place where you can make or break someone's day
Yeah.
like
Oh
very
yeah.
easily.
Oh yeah. What I do at the library, I'm essentially customer service. I am a circulation desk employee. So I'm the first person people see as they come in the library. I'm the last person they see as they walk out. And I've found that I've had people who walking in, they've been very rude, but by the time they walk out, I'm like, have a great day. They're like, thank you, you too. I'm
Yeah.
like, yes. Because I greet everybody. I'm like, hi, how are you? And they'll be like, oh, today's been an awful day. I'm miserable. And then I'll be like, oh, and then I'll listen. I'll actually
Yeah.
listen. And then by the time they leave, they're better. They're in
Yep.
a better spot to tackle the world.
And it takes so little effort to just be nice. Like
Exactly.
it actually takes so much more effort. I think it is the frowning, right? You use so many more muscles
To
frowning than you
frown
do
than to
smiling.
smile. Yep.
Yep. Yep. It's so much more work to be a dick. And if you're
Right?
going through stuff, I get it. Like you are okay to have those emotions and be upset about stuff, but
Yes.
you don't have to make everyone else around you suffer.
Exactly. It's like, I understand you're going through something, but we don't all have to go through that.
Yeah, don't pull us into that.
Exactly. We're all going through something too. And that's not the same something that you're going through, and we're going to get pulled into you, and then we're going to go through both of our things, and it's going to be complicated.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you manage and how do you I imagine pulling you into stuff with your ghostwriting and things like that. I do you get triggered a lot because of the situations you've gone through in your past where it's like you have to kind of rework through stuff based off of what you're experiencing with other people's lives?
So it really depends. Some triggers I have over a decade of experience with. I've been dealing with those for like 12 years now. And those ones are a little easier to kind of just be like, okay, this is coming up for me. Let's kind of think my way through this while also talking somebody through their trigger on this subject. And then there are other triggers that kind of I have to kind of put into the back of my mind, put on the back burner until after the session, and then I have to work through them myself. Because I know if I start going through them myself on the session, I won't be able to get the other person through.
That's got to be a skill that for one you probably didn't realize you needed until you were in the moment.
Yes.
Yeah, and you're like, "Oh, okay, hang on."
Hang on a second. We're
Yep,
gonna be
yep.
okay here.
Yeah. But then also, like, that is a skill that you have to keep working on and develop over time. That's not something that, as soon as you realized you needed that skill, you just had it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I've I've been dealing with like other people's trauma, for lack of a better term, for a long time now. Since I was in college, really, but just kind of unofficially. So, not like getting compensated for anything, not getting the recognition. I was with an abusive ex-partner, and I would have to handle all of his trauma, all of my trauma, all of his friends' trauma, and I was expected to just kind of sit there and not talk unless I was spoken to. And that did not go well.
Yeah. And it sucks in those situations too, because it's like you have the choice to leave those situations and you're choosing to stay in them. So there is a piece of like the accountability of like, I am choosing this, but it is so hard to know that in the moment because it's right in your face. And I've
Yes,
gone through the same thing where I was in a very toxic relationship and I didn't see so much of it until I stepped away from it. And I was like,
exactly.
wow.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Same. It was the same way with me. You don't realize how totally just toxic and abusive relationships are until you take that step back and you're like, wait, that's not normal.
Yeah.
But to be able to get that step back is the luxury a lot of people don't actually have because they're living it 24/7.
Yeah, it is hard. It is so like I don't want to necessarily say that they don't have that luxury because that limits them so much and that prisons them. It's just very fucking hard.
Fair, fair.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But it is when you're in the middle of it, you are doing the best you can.
to
And it's like a rubber
survive.
band effect too, because when you wrap yourself up with somebody else and you're trying to grow and you're trying to do this growth, eventually you're going to either snap back or the rubber band's going to break. And
Exactly.
if they're not growing, a lot of times you just get snapped back and you're back into that very toxic mindset yourself. Like I was a lot of the problem
Yes.
in those relationships myself because I had a toxic mindset. That's what I was used to. The fights, I would also escalate the fights. I wasn't
Yeah,
in a healthy mindset myself. But
exactly.
when I would try to grow, I would get snapped back. And eventually it broke. And
Yeah.
that's where you have to get.
Yeah. That's a good analogy. That's actually kind of the same thing that happened with me. Every time I would try to grow, it'd just be
Yep.
until finally it was like,
You went too far. Yep.
yep,
Yep.
I went too far
Yep.
and I couldn't get snapped back.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and likely if it was similar for your situation, shit just got too dark to where you're like, and it's the same thing with like the World War I thing. Sometimes you just need those really dark situations to realize there is light.
Exactly. It was that way. I actually, as funny as this is, my first day in a mental hospital actually came from that relationship, and that's when I knew it
Yep.
was done.
Yeah.
It's when I was like, no more.
Yeah. Nope. That makes sense. And it sucks that a lot of times that's how our brains work as humans, but it's our roadmap, like we've said before. Those triggers and
Exactly.
those situations are our roadmap to getting out of those situations. You're not trapped. There are ways out. It's
Exactly.
just sometimes really freaking hard.
Triggers and trauma are roadmaps. They guide you in really bizarre, not good feeling ways, but they guide you.
Yep. Yes, not good feeling ways. That is so important. Like when you are
Yes.
going through your growth,
It's
it's
gonna
not,
suck.
it's so uncomfortable and it sucks. Do not
Yes.
stop though. It is, get
Exactly.
comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Exactly. If you stay in your comfort zone forever, you're never gonna grow. You're never gonna change. You're never gonna reach your potential.
Yeah, yeah. Even just like growing pains. Think of growing pains. Like you are literally
Exactly.
in pain because you're growing. You're becoming more.
Exactly.
Yeah. So as you continue and you look at your future, what are your hopes and your dreams with, the ghostwriting in your career and that sort of thing? Or do you have anything or are you just like winging it?
I have some goals and dreams. I'm hoping they are closer than farther, but I my goal is to pay the bills with ghostwriting. Just pay the bills doing stuff I love. That's what I want. I want to have enough money to survive from doing things that don't suck. You know?
Yeah.
Like, if I could make enough money to comfortably survive off of the ghostwriting, that would be all I do. I would be fine with that being all I do. But, as the economy and everything, I'm saving up for a house, like, all that kind of thing. So, multiple income streams.
Yeah. Yeah. Not sleeping.
Yeah, exactly. That's basically what it translates to.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand that 100% with the podcast and full-time job and everything else. It's like, all right, cool. 5 hours of sleep every night's the new routine. Got it.
Yes,
But again, it's an uncomfortable moment for growth.
exactly. That's what I'm hoping this is.
You got
That's
it,
what I
girl.
am more than hoping this is.
So your passion to kind of continue down this, obviously your dream is to do this because it is what you're passionate about. And you get this fulfillment of helping people tell their stories. So that is what kind of
Exactly.
continues you down this path.
Exactly. That's what keeps me going, is knowing that I am helping this person be remembered. Because one thing, I will be honest, one thing I'm terrified of is once I die and everybody who knows me dies, I'll be forgotten. I'm scared I'll just be some headstone somewhere, you know? Just like
Yeah.
so many people are. That terrifies me. So
But
knowing that I can help somebody have a legacy and helping to cement their memory is very important to me. It's what keeps me going down this path.
I love that you have this passion in your dream, right? And there's no credit that you get back from it. There's no
Exactly.
recognition that you are so selflessly doing this. And I love that you even put, even if the book never gets published.
Yeah,
Like that is so selfless.
yeah. Even if the book never gets published, and like the reason I don't make a living off of this right now is because I don't charge nearly as much as other people do.
Yeah.
Like I charge like a fraction of what market value is. But
And it sounds like you do an amazing job at
it's
what you do
because,
too.
yeah, it's because I want it to be accessible to people.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody to bankrupt themselves trying to afford my services.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And if you think about it, you are helping the elderly. You are helping people who's probably on SSI or, in income
Exactly.
and almost down to the penny, their money is planned out for each month.
Exactly. So that's one of the reasons I'm always like, listen, I will, it's not a priority to pay me. I will
Have
get
you
paid some.
Have you ever considered like a sponsorship situation where people pay you have a set amount that you go through, it costs to work with you, and then you promote the sponsorship and be like, if anyone's interested in sponsoring this author, and then kind of give like a brief description of what the potential story is going to look like, and they can sponsor their story.
That sounds amazing. I love the sound of that. I never even thought of that.
Yeah. Like I'm thinking if I read Janet's story and she was a single mom with 6 kids or whatever, and she wants to tell her story and she's 94 years old, yes, let's pay for Janet to tell her story. That sounds amazing. It's like an
Yeah.
adopt an author kind of situation.
Yeah. Adopt a book, adopt an author.
Yeah.
Adopt a story. Adopt a legacy.
Ooh,
I like that
fund a
one.
legacy.
Fund a legacy. I like it.
Yeah. Oh,
There
I
we
like that.
go.
All right, guys, if you guys want to fund a legacy, go over to Hannah and
Exactly.
I love that.
I love that too, actually.
It just makes sense because, like, they don't have the money, but also you're
They
so
don't.
passionate about it. There's got to be a way.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I don't want anybody bankrupting themselves to pay for me. I've had things where I'm like, listen, you pay for food. You don't have to pay me this month. If you cannot
Oh,
afford to, you buy
yeah.
food for yourself. Don't
Yeah.
sacrifice. Don't go without just so I can get paid. Like, don't do it.
Yeah, because
I
I
will be
imagine that's an
okay.
actual conversation they have to have is like, do I buy my groceries or do I pay for this that my children get to read and my grandkids get to read? Like, I
Yeah.
imagine that's a pretty easy, yeah, I want to do this and I'll skip out on eating,
Yeah,
and that's not
exactly.
okay.
And I'm like, no, take care of yourself. I will be okay. I will keep working. We will figure something out. I
Yeah.
will be okay. You have to take care of yourself.
Now, is pricing something that it varies client to client, or is that something that you're willing to kind of share with us so anyone listening who's interested in your services can kind of get an idea, or do you recommend them booking with you?
So, my legacy ghostwriting is mostly between 1,000 and 2,000 USD. That's about my range. And then I have taken on ghostwriting projects that aren't legacy ghostwriting, and that starts at 4,000 USD.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And so if someone were to book with you, what are some things that they could expect working with you?
So, some things that people can expect working with me. Usually, it is at least one introductory call where I get on with the person. It can be phone, Zoom, in person if you're local to me, where I meet with the person whose story I'll be telling. So we'll have that introductory call. We'll make sure we get along. We'll make sure we vibe. And that introductory call is always free because there's no obligation, nothing like that. And if we don't get along, we can just go our separate ways. It's okay. I don't hold it against anybody. During that introductory call, I'll quote the price. I'll quote um, just what I will do for the service. Like for some ghostwriting, I do writing and editing. Some I just do the writing and they find a separate editor. Some I do the writing and editing and I find a formatter. I find a cover designer, all that kind of thing. So depending on the services you'd like, it depends on the end price. But usually we just discuss what I offer, what I can do, how often the person and I would get together and meet. Like if they can't meet every week and they want to do every 2 weeks, great. Like we just figure out a schedule. And then yeah, if we vibe, we have our first interview meeting. I tell you at the end, I ask, let me know if you want to work with me. If so, start getting your mementos together, start figuring out the stories you want to highlight, the stories you want to tell, and we'll go from there.
I love that. Now, do you have interviews with like the kids or the grandkids? I imagine a lot of times they're involved too.
Yes. So that's one thing I also do. I also interview the people around the person. So, like, for example, I am working right now with a woman who has cancer. And for her story, I'm just talking to her. She's the only one who wants to be involved in her story. But I've had people who are like, "Can you interview my kids about what it was like growing up, like with these conditions that I had, the restrictions that I had? How was their lives? Did it change their lives? Did it impact them?"
I'm gonna give you another suggestion here, just because this is sparking my creativity, and I don't even this is I would probably bawl every time I talk to these people, but you're so passionate about it, and I could just see this working out really well. Is you doing a podcast where it's episodes of you interviewing these people and what they're saying? I would love something like that to listen, and it doesn't even have to be video, just what you
Yeah,
record, as long as they say, yeah, that's okay.
exactly. Yeah, little snippets.
Yeah,
Like,
just a suggestion, just because you're getting me all inspired just from listening to you.
I have thought about doing a podcast. Like, that's the funny thing. I have thought about it. And I'm
Yeah,
like, I don't have the skills and all that
girl,
kind of thing.
message me later. It is so easier than what you think.
Yeah, then I will message you because that would be awesome.
I think it would be another really great way. And two, like capturing their words in a book is so beautiful and it's so much more personal. But
Yes.
listening to, like, can you imagine sending that clip to the
Like a
kids to listen to?
QR code with the voice and put it on the internet so it's there forever.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. In the book, just put a QR code where it's like, if you want to hear this story as it was told,
Yes. Oh, that gives
scan.
me goosebumps.
I love that idea.
Yes. Ah, yep. That's new goals. New goals.
New goals.
I love it. Well, one thing I definitely want our listeners to take away from this is, for one, if you have a passion, run with it. You find
Yes,
a way to make it work, definitely. But if you have dark moments in your life and you have stuff that is really hard, just know that that could potentially be the thing that gives you passion later on in life, or the thing that is the catalyst to your growth that changes your life entirely.
exactly. Your life is based on your choices.
Yep.
And if you make choices from a place of fear, which I know we all have a tendency to do, but if you make choices from a place of fear, you're never going to grow.
Yes.
And growing is uncomfortable, but it's necessary if you want to ever have a chance at reaching your passion.
That's such a good message, Hannah. I love that so much.
Thank you
So
so much.
if anyone wants to uh, work with you or reach out to you or follow you for your potential podcast in the future, where would they go to follow you, and how do they keep in touch with you?
So I have a website, Instagram, TikTok, and they're all under the same, and Threads. I like Threads a lot. They're all under the same username, which is H as in Hannah, M as in Mary, Wolfram, my last name. So I hope that'll be included in the podcast description somewhere, so I don't have to phonetically spell things out for everybody.
I'm gonna write it down right now so that way I can put it
Awesome.
on there.
And my email is Hannah Wolfram Writes at gmail.com.
And Wolfram is spelled Wolfram.
Yes. Yep.
Perfect.
Wolfram. But it's actually pronounced Wolfram.
Yeah.
Gotta love the Germans.
Oh yeah. Gotta love English. Oh my goodness. Any sort of spelling and how you actually pronounce it, it just blows my
Oh, I
mind.
know.
Like wrench or
French. Yeah.
knight. Why is
Who?
there a K?
Who? Who does these things?
This is amazing. You are amazing. I love this conversation, and I know, just because I experienced it, how inspirational this is going to be for other people.
I hope so. I really hope so.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening to this episode of Lemon's Listening Library. I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Hey, guys. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Lemon's Listening Library. Remember, every story has a journey, and every journey deserves to be heard. Keep reading, keep writing, and keep listening.